Get me.
Can you hear me?
Where'd you?
It's like a fistish.
Yeah,
A fist or two. Yeah.
The stone.
Is this good?
Yep,
Should I?
perfect.
Perfect.
Just like there, yeah. And just like at a normal volume.
Normal. I'm quite quiet, so I feel like.
Yeah, so maybe just up a little bit then.
You talk like that.
Yeah. Hi. Can I ask you a favour? Make sure you subscribe to the podcast.
That's it, James done our plug for us, man.
That's my favourite bit.
Are we rolling? We're rolling.
Are we?
We're on.
We're rolling, boy.
Jamie's got his knee sleeves on for the podcast, so he can pull them right up
Prepped.
into the next session.
Spot on. Straight in.
Session of
Always ready.
burpees and ergs that we've got.
Always ready.
We don't smell too funky either, which is it's a bonus.
Mum washed them yesterday.
Today we're joined by Jamie Harrop, JST athlete, JST coach, also coach at Shapesmiths as well.
Yeah.
Anything else you do? Full-time dog dad?
Full-time dog dad.
Husband.
Some good impressions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just found that out.
Yeah.
You're up this week doing a bit of a training camp with us and the other guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice to have you up. It's
Yeah.
the first time I've actually met you properly this week.
Oh, did you not see when he came over to
No, I
Wigan
missed him
last
that time. Yeah, so first
Lucky
time
for
of
you.
having the pleasure.
Straight onto the pod.
Yeah.
Good to have someone people can understand on the podcast,
time?
isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's true.
Yeah.
Reach our southern
Yeah.
viewers.
Yeah, exactly.
So today, Jamie, I just wanted to go into a bit of a background about you, you know, starting from before CrossFit, when you were a little bit younger, right up until, you know, where you're at right now. And I think it'd just be good for, you know, people on the programme just to be familiar with who you are, because you joined us about, I think it was October last year,
Yeah.
in around there. So
As a
yeah,
coach.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you've been an athlete for a good couple of years now as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just feel like it'd be good for people to kind of meet you, you know, get a
Yeah, brilliant.
idea of who you are.
How far back do you want to go?
Let's go right back. So you,
Just the start of your sporting
Yeah.
career, maybe, yeah, as
Back-
early as you can remember.
yeah, let's do that.
Rugby Union since about 8 years old, basically. I remember my dad being like, I got a PlayStation. And I remember my dad being like, you can't on a Sunday just be playing PlayStation. We need to get you out of the house. And so went down the village rugby club. My family didn't really have a rugby background, but it was just the closest sports team to us.
Where did you grow up? Where was it?
Down in Bath.
Right, okay.
Bath. Do you
Yeah.
guys want to practice saying Bath rather than
Bath?
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 Bath.
Bath.
I think there's no R, so I think it's just Bath.
So yeah, grew up down there.
Big rugby union city, isn't it,
Big
really?
rugby union city.
Yeah.
I kind of the smallest kid in the team,
Yeah.
and then like the next year I have my growth spurt, and suddenly I'm like the biggest kid in the team, and I'm like, oh, I like this. And then
Growth
yeah,
spurt must have stopped then, did it?
yeah. And then the next year I'm back to the smallest kid in the team. And then yeah, just slowly work my way up in rugby. Really, when I leave school, I was going to go to uni and then instead get signed for Leicester. Leicester Tigers, yeah, which was kind of so yeah. I always, even though I grew up in Bath, I always wanted to play for Leicester Tigers because they had in my position a guy who was about my height, and usually people who played my position were really tall.
So what position were you? Was it flanker initially?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was open side, yeah, exactly. And they're usually like 6'2" or something, and I'm probably just under 6 foot, I would say, yeah. Give or take.
Yeah.
And
So I guess let's go back to, you know, you got into rugby union. What stage I presuming you got into some sort of a academy, maybe when you were a teen, or did you not? Or?
Yeah. So I'm at Bath Academy when I'm a teen, and then they bin me off basically. And
Right,
like,
okay.
You're a bit too. We don't think you're going to be big enough to play this position. And then Tigers picked me up from there.
Right. So when you're in the academy, I guess, what sort of like stuff were they kind of teaching to you? Is there anything specific that you remember that you're like, oh yeah, I do remember from that age that kind of sticking with me, whether it's, I don't know, certain values or, I don't know, a certain, physicality or anything like that? Is there anything you remember?
I guess all those processes that slowly become natural as you're a professional athlete.
Yeah.
And particularly if you feel like you are not naturally very gifted, which is maybe where I always felt, you always feel like you have to be good at all the things that require no talent. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to get your diet spot on.
Yeah.
You've got to be the first one out warming up because, just got to be ready to start. Yeah, exactly. All of those kind of things I felt like just became super ingrained. I never drunk when I was a teenager growing up. So I'm like 14, 15, and me and my dad on Sunday would do extra fitness, which I loved. And then one time I go to a house party on a Saturday night and I get drunk for the first time. And then my dad is like, oh, well, there's no point us doing extra fitness on a Sunday. And at that moment I was like, cool, I'm never drinking again. And I pretty much never drink again other than like New Year, that kind of thing. Yeah.
It's really interesting that. So like with your parents and I guess your dad in particular, did they kind of push you into doing rugby? Like once you got into it, were they like, no, you've got to kind of come to the rugby sessions, or did you off your own back just want to go to?
Yeah, I think entirely off my own back.
Right,
really.
okay.
Mum and Dad probably never missed a game really, and we're at every game. And even when there's a big crowd, I'm like, oh my God, I can still hear my mum screaming away.
But like a voice that just
it's like, oh mum. But no, definitely not. Definitely just off your own back.
Yeah, I think it's a great little story, that, to be honest, because you hear, stories about like Michael Phelps and similar situation where his parents never really pushed him. He was the one that got himself up at 6 o'clock in the morning to do his swimming sessions, and similar to you, where there was a time when he could have decided, right, I'm gonna, go down this path of doing more social things with other kids, like drinking, going out, doing that sort of stuff. But again, it was like, no, we're gonna.
Yeah, I just always felt like I wasn't naturally very good at catching and passing. I wasn't naturally very big. I wasn't naturally very fast. So I thought,
Rugby Union,
so I just thought, well, I'm going to just have to work twice as hard as other people to just be as good as those guys who naturally are.
Yeah. It's really cool to hear that, because I'm sure now, even like 10 years later after, when you're in the academy and at that point, when you made that decision, I've read a little thing before on Instagram where Liam Holmes did a little kind of testimonial to you saying, oh, like, it's been a pleasure to work with Jamie. Like, he's so, committed to getting his nutrition right, to, make sure that, everything outside and around training is on point, like the preparation side of things, and that those are all the things that you can control.
Yeah, exactly. I always feel like that as a coach. Sometimes you coach people and you think, oh, the program for you maybe isn't even the thing we need to dial in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so many other things that would get you to the next level.
Yeah.
You've just got to always think, if it was like Steve Fawcett, who's maybe stressed and hasn't got his nutrition right and isn't sleeping, versus Steve Fawcett, who is getting all his nutrition right and is sleeping and is just super in the moment. He's always going to,
big time. I think so. On the training camp that we did the other month, a big part of what I went through was like the preparation things and the stuff outside of training. And I said, it's easy to think, oh, like I feel like I could fit in more training. I should be doing more training volume, more. And I went through this checklist of all the stuff outside of training that they should be going through, like hydration, nutrition, your recovery, like you're doing your activation work the day before, you're doing like your mobility work, you're doing a proper cool down. And everyone was like, I'm actually not doing very many of these things here.
It was the first thing that I said to the guys. Obviously on Monday when this training camp started, we had a bit of a busy time with some of the learners here. But the first thing that I said to the guys that came for this training camp was, we've got all day to train, which is probably, people have got more time than what they usually have when they're back home. So rather than us doing like loads more training, we might do some little bit of extras. Just do everything a lot better. Like we've just got more time to be able to like put these things up on the priority list, where you're having your food or your shake and your pre-workout, whatever it is, your supplements, your cool downs, like everything can just be dialed in because you've got the time to do it. Where I think a lot of the time people see how, like, if they want to go 2 sessions a day, or they suddenly have a bit more time to be able to train, and it's just like they just use that time to smash themselves to pieces rather than actually using that time to get the lifestyle bang on for them to be able to maybe eventually start training more. I think it comes back similar to that email. I don't know if you read. Oh yeah, you must have read the email because you were the coach that was in question in the email. Just about your actions and your behaviours aligning with the goal that you want to do. So if you know, like you said, if a steam force that is stressed, underslept, like not eating enough, trying to perform at a level that's just not capable, you just get nowhere.
I think transition space. I think MJ was telling me you were saying something about this as well. Most CrossFit athletes probably, or a lot of them, work in a CrossFit gym, and are maybe coaching, doing their PT, you know, checking their emails, and then suddenly they're like, right, it's time for me to train now, and to change from being, you know, Jamie Harrop coach to then Jamie Harrop athlete. It's just so hard, isn't it? Because probably you're still like right in between sets checking your emails because your mind's still kind of half in there.
It's so true, and you know, like you say, you've got to have a bit of a decompression time where, like, say someone works in an office and they're driving to the gym, it could be, you know, actually in the car, start putting like your playlist on that's kind of, you know, getting you in the zone. But specifically, like, if you're a coach and you actually work in the place, I feel like you've got to find a bit of space in the gym somewhere where you can just have that bit of time to yourself to start getting your thoughts together, to get you into the zone, like you said. And I think a lot of people just take the work with them straight into the training session, and, you know, still sending emails, which we've probably all done. But
I've definitely been, definitely guilty of that. And I feel like in the last 4 to 6 weeks or like got much better at it, and you know, you can kind of share what you do as well, Jamie. But a big thing for me is just like the drink that I'm about to drink is like a pre-workout drink or whatever it is. Like, just sit down somewhere like away from people and just like drink the drink. And that the time it takes you to drink that drink is your transition time. And
I love that.
if you've got a little bit of caffeine in the drink as well, it also gets you a bit perked up. And if you just need anything that you need to clear up, whether it was like work-wise or like, you just do that, make sure it's out of the way early on while you're drinking the drink, and then, you know, when you get to it, like, nothing.
Do you do that? Did you know about that before, or were you aware of that, like, transition sort of?
No, do you know, I started so I moved out over lockdown into just a new house, and it's got a big garage with that I've kitted out into a gym. And I started to find that, because obviously you'd be working at home doing your programming, and then you just wouldn't have that transition space, would you? You'd just be like, well, I'm still in that same mindset of like doing my bills and checking that. And then suddenly, you know, you're mid-set or whatever, and then you look and you've got a stressful email, and then suddenly your mind's totally off the task. Even Annetta, who was out here training, was saying that's the best thing about coming down here, isn't it? Is that she's just totally focused on what she's doing.
And the other person that's very good at doing that is David Shrunky. It's like after a certain time in the evening, like 7 o'clock, he's like, right, I'm not looking at any more emails or anything like that. He'll only pretty much message you in the morning, and then definitely
you might get a reply.
But you just have set times where he does his work. If you message him outside of that time, like, you're not getting a response. And I just think that level of being present in whatever you're doing just makes such a big difference, because the application into training, the application into the work that you do, like, you can put yourself all in, you know, in each kind of
What was
situation.
it? Mamba mentality, is it Mamba? Yeah, the Mamba mentality, that was LeBron James?
Kobe.
Or Kobe, was it Kobe? Yeah, and that's where it comes from, and David mentions that and he's posted about it a few times before, and I think it's basically that, isn't it, where you just like, whatever you're doing, you're like applied into it, and you switched on
You're
with
present
it,
in
it's
it,
like, it's a thing that you like, no one can do it, and I sometimes, quite often will slip out of it, but you have to keep like consciously working on it. I don't think anyone can just do it off just trying it once.
Yeah.
I think it's particularly challenging when you are a coach and an athlete, isn't it? Because you're kind of in the same space when that you're doing one job, and then you've got to switch and be doing another job. You know, whereas watching these guys outside playing rugby league, they're not worrying about their bills at home, are they? They're just playing rugby league because they're here.
Yeah.
That's what they're there to do.
Yeah. Just kind of again going back to you playing rugby and stuff. So you said when you got let go from Bath, was that, I guess, the first kind of big setback that you had before you joined, or was it like you missed the academy there and you went straight into Leicester Tigers as you kind of faced a big
Yeah, do you know, I was
setback
thinking about this when I was driving along. I feel like one of the good things about being involved in team sport is that you just get used to just endless amounts of setbacks, don't you? Do you know what I mean? You're going to lose every other week. You're probably, not going to get picked every other week. And so you just kind of are able to always put it into perspective and also use it as a bit of fire, but not kind of have too many highs and lows.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe if you've just gone straight into CrossFit, obviously you're not having a game every week, you're not being picked every other week, so maybe you just wouldn't have those coping strategies for
failure.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas I know some people you speak to, and they've maybe had a bad open workout or something, and you can see that
complete meltdown.
Complete
don't know how to
meltdown.
cope with it.
Whereas maybe if you have a bad open workout, you're just like, well, cool, I'll work at those things, and hopefully I'll do better next year. On to the next thing.
We've spoke about this probably in 3 or 4 different podcasts. We've come around to it for the last few years now about dealing with failure. And like when I was like under 16s, I was literally playing for under 16s, just regular team, like no academy or anything. And we were like middle of the table, like we'd win a game, draw a game, lose a game, probably lose 2 games, draw a game, win a game. Like it was like, and when you won, like you were buzzing, and when you drew, it was like, oh yeah, could have won, but then we're glad that we didn't lose. And if you draw, it was just like, you didn't just like get used to it, but you got used to dealing with what you needed to do, rather than just like getting down in the dumps about it. And we've been around some people before who've maybe come from like a really successful like upbringing in sport, so maybe they've gone into like the best academies, they've been the captains, they've been like the best player or like world champion, where they're constantly winning, and then when they come into CrossFit and they're approached with like different challenges to what they're used to, and they lose, it's like whole world is like collapsing, like they can't deal with that failure to the same level as someone who's kind of probably come through, probably like the 3 of us really, of just accepting how to like take defeat and build on it for next time. I think it's a huge part, especially with CrossFit, with the variety. You're never going to get every workout that's like great for you because of the variety of the workouts. So there's some that are great, some that are bad, some that are alright, and you need to be able to deal with those emotions for each one.
I was listening to the other day Rob Baxter, who is he like director at Exeter? And he was saying that like they're creating, something pretty good down there, pretty special. And he said that they make sure that the highs aren't too high and that the lows aren't too low, because if you're riding this wave of roller coaster of emotions all the time, it's just really draining. Whereas say you played a really good game, but the last kick of the game, the other team, just pipped you, like hit a drop goal or anything like that. It's like, you might have done all you could in that game to the best of your ability, but it was maybe just a stroke of luck from the other team to, pip you at the end. And it's like, well, you did your best and you gave your best, at every point that you could in that game. So there's no point being, super low after that game. It's one of them where it's like, rather than going too low, it's like, well, what can I have done better in that game, and what can I work on this next week in training to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
That's why Steve's effort over outcomes so important to have as your mindset, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? I'm just thinking about the Open. I don't do new skills very well, but box jump overs. I was saying to Phil Roy, I've watched Phil Roy do box jump overs on his Instagram video about 100 times because I really struggled with the step down box jump over rather than rebounding. And I remember doing that workout, and it was really hard, and I did okay, but not great. And then the next workout was like deadlifts and burpees, which are like my two favourites, and I was like 200 and something in the world, which for me was an amazing score. But the first workout, I definitely worked way harder, and I was like 2000th in the world or something. But for me, that first one, managing to figure out how to do box jump overs with a step down was way harder than just doing deadlifts and burpees.
Yeah, it's interesting that. So coming back to, you said when you were younger, you kind of always like saw Leicester as your team, and then obviously you get to join them. They take you on. I guess how was that feeling, and how did you kind of see that opportunity?
Yeah, it was amazing. Real cool. Obviously, you get loads of stash and get to hang out with all your heroes and that kind of thing. Do you know? I think one of the biggest things though was when you go from. I've heard people on this podcast talk about it. When you go from your sport being your fun thing to suddenly your sport being your full-time thing, it's so all-consuming. It's a lot more pressure because you're like, I kind of want to stay doing this and keep getting paid to do this. It was a real hard shift, because when you're at school, you get to study history and you get to, do science, and then, once you're done with that, you get to play a bit of rugby and it's wicked. Whereas then suddenly you're like, right, I'm getting out, I'm playing rugby, I'll then have breakfast, and then we'll watch some rugby, and then I'll do some strength and conditioning. And then we'll talk about some rugby. It was really hard, and I remember really struggling with it initially to be like, wow, this is the thing you really wanted, but at the same time it's really all consuming. Yeah.
How did you like, what kind of tactics, what strategies did you do then to be able to cope with that and the change?
I feel like cultivating interests outside of rugby, like actively being like, I'm not just going to watch rugby now at the weekends. I've got to find
something needs to become that rugby now.
Exactly. I've got to find some other things that I'm interested in. And also, I remember again, kind of a bit like transition space and separation. I remember we would drive back from training in the evening, and once we would be, this is me and my flatmate, who I played in the same team with, once we would be in the underground car park, we were like, cool, that's the end of rugby chat now. We're not allowed to talk about what the, not allowed to talk about selection. We're not allowed to talk about anything.
And I've said that to you before, and again, this is going back to Kobe. He was someone that did the same, and you look at Kobe as being someone who was like obsessed with his sport and everything. But the CNO from Nike, the previous CNO, said no, like Kobe would come to you with like other ideas as to how like Nike can do things better, and he'd come to Nike and be like, have you tried using this sort of technology before? Coming to them with like fresh ideas, having interests outside of basketball, because you say like, it does become all consuming, and it's how can you still have that bit of balance, because you can tell yourself all day long like, I'm so grateful for this opportunity, it is great to be able to do this all the time, this is what I've always wanted to do, but you still need a little bit of something else so your regs aren't completely in that basket.
Exactly. And also, let's say if I was a full-time CrossFit athlete now, and I was doing CrossFit all day, there'd be a chance I'd then get home and just scroll through Instagram looking at other CrossFit athletes on Instagram, and then I'd be like, right, should we pop Miles to Madison on the TV while we have dinner? And then by the time I get around to training tomorrow, I'm like, I've done a lot of CrossFit. That's all I've thought about for the last 24 hours. I feel like when you get home, just try and think about other things. Do you know what I mean?
It's a tough one, isn't it? Especially within CrossFit. Like I said, there've been so many different areas in CrossFit, like the weightlifting element, and like snatch being like such a technical movement, and then you got the gymnastics elements, which are never ending, and like technicality, and then even just the conditioning pieces and all the range of different movements. Like when you get into it and you're keen on it and you want to compete, like you need to learn, you need to be aware of all these movements as quick as possible, really, to be able to adapt to them. So I think for a lot of people like getting new into CrossFit, it can be so easy to get like fully submerged in it, like outside of training time, because you need to catch up, really. Like you need to catch up with like your knowledge of the sport to be able to, you know, get to the level. It's switching on and off between them. I feel like a lot of people who are new, and when I say new, like within the first couple of years of competing, like it's full on. For a lot of them.
100%. So at Leicester Tigers, again, being, I guess were you starting most games? Like what kind of level were you, I don't know, first team all the time?
No,
like
definitely not.
What
Just
was the score there?
academy and
Right,
second team games. And then I'm at Leicester for a bit, and then eventually they bin me off, and then I go to Coventry, who are in the Championship in the league below.
How was that to take? Because obviously, like, you feel like Leicester's your team from when you were young, and then they obviously let you go. I mean, that must have been pretty hard to take.
Yeah, pretty hard. Although I do, I can really distinctly remember this. They have told me, we're not going to re-sign you for next season. And suddenly, for the last couple of months, I was playing way better, because you obviously have just put so much pressure on yourself that you've just gone into your skin a little bit. Yeah. Suddenly I remember being like, I'm playing way better now that I'm not playing for a contract or anything like that.
And again, it's so funny, like you hear Dan Carter speak about stuff like that, having space to be able to, you know, like
express themselves.
Yeah. And like you say, that probably gave you that space, because rather than worrying about the pressure, it was like, I can just, you know,
just enjoy it.
Yeah.
I feel like with my training, I always have felt it a little bit, to be honest, when you start getting closer to a competition, like your attitude going into a training session, when you're like, right, well, the competition's like 4 weeks away now, I need to make sure I'm going this fast, or like lifting this weight, like you put that more pressure on, and then suddenly hitting those weights becomes harder than like training like at this period of time now, where it's just like you say, expressing yourself. Like you hit weights that previously, like, I used to have to focus and work hard for that.
Yeah. So did like when you were at Leicester and Bath and Coventry, and did they go through much mindset stuff, like how to deal with that pressure and that?
Probably not at that time. I remember we did have access to sports psychologists and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But probably didn't utilise them
as
much as we should. I was listening to or watching. There's a cool document, like an 8-part documentary on Tom Brady on Disney Plus at the moment, and Tom Brady, when you hear him talk, is obviously he's all about the grind, and he's like all in, and he is obviously totally consumed by it. But then when you listen to Gronk, who also played in the same team as Tom Brady, he's just always talking about he would only play well if it was like a joyful experience, or if it was fun, or you know, and totally different. Which made me think, as a coach, you've got to be really switched on to those kind of things, haven't you? Do you know what I mean? Some players or some athletes that you coach, you've got to like up the fun element and just be like, this is really good fun. This is low pressure. It doesn't really matter. Just focus on your effort and enjoy it. And then other people obviously just need you to fire them up and that kind of thing.
And I think we've learned that a lot probably this last 6 months with having people here on a regular basis. It's like, you know, people thrive, you know, differently, and different things work for different people. And like you say, it's being aware of that as a coach and a leader, and trying to nurture that, you know, nurture it for each person, what, you know, works for them, while still finding a balance for the whole team as well.
Even like mid-workout, the way people like to be spoken to.
Yeah, that's big. I find that's a big thing between like different people. Something I'm always kind of like really interested in is like, how does this person, that if I'm going to go up to a person and in a workout, if I don't know them, I'm not going to say anything, because you don't want to be that person that says something, and it's just like they're just that person that does not want to be spoken to in a certain way, or like certain words or things just might like kick them off. But I think I'm really interested in that. Some people want to be shouted abusefully at, and other people, like, it needs to be encouraging, or just,
Yeah.
oh, fuck off, because I don't want you talking to me.
Yeah, I remember during quarters, Harriet, my wife, usually kind of judges me, and she knows that I just like kind of positive affirmations and just like little reminders to breathe, to relax, you know, and that kind of thing. Then during quarters, there were some other people judging me, and they'd be like, "How bad do you want it?" And you're like, "Oh, get out of my face!" It's stressing me out. I don't want this at all.
I don't really want it that much. Not anymore, anyway. One of my first early competitions, anyway, I remember it was probably one of the first times Fran actually came to watch me at a competition. And I remember the first event, it was Manchester Games 2012 or 13. It was a swim, 300 metre swim, and then you got out and it was like 75 burpees on the deck, and everyone was like, at some point everyone was doing burpees, and I just remember she was behind me, like to the right, and just like screaming and shouting as if I was doing bad in the event, like, come on, like, come on, and I just turned around like, fuck. she wasn't impressed, but like I spoke to her after, like, I'm sorry for like telling you fuck off, but you don't need to shout at me like that. I'm trying my hardest. I was actually third in the event. I was doing well, but just tell me I'm doing well. Tell me keep going. Don't make me stressed, because there's enough voices in my head telling me to fucking keep going. I don't need one more.
Exactly that.
Love that. There's a few other stories as well we could,
And when people said it at a time around you, they realise, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Exactly.
They do.
Just need to chop their head off one or two times.
So how did it end with rugby? Did it end on a good note, a sour note? Yeah.
So age about 25, probably even before that, I just started to get little concussions, little knocks on the head. And then my last season, pretty much every game I'd get like a little kind of deja vu sensation every time I'd do a tackle, where I'd be like, oh, have I dreamt this game? Have I already played in this game? Or I'd obviously have like a little kind of strange bit of memory loss, and then I'd have 2-3 games where I was fully out, and then I'd wake up and then I wouldn't even remember like what year it was, and then kind of towards the end of that season have like a big knockout, and then I go to the hospital, and then every time I'm changing rooms in the hospital I'm crying because I can't remember where I am, and I'm like having a full freak out, and then I was like, right, probably need to stop playing if I'm getting like a head knock every single game. And so it kind of ended super abruptly. In my head I was going to play until I was old and rubbish, so then luckily at about that point, this is probably like 2014, I'd kind of just started getting into CrossFit, which kind of just about filled a kind of competitive void for me, really.
I mean, like for it to just kind of end pretty abruptly, like you say, I guess, did you have a period before you kind of went into, like CrossFit and coaching, and was it like, no, luckily I'd done just enough to...
No, do you know, I was pretty lost for a bit. I got a job in the city, started doing that for a little bit and hated it. I went a bit mad. And then while I'm in the city, I was kind of coaching in the evenings at a CrossFit box, and then an opportunity at Shapesmiths opened up to coach there full time, and I was like, right, I'm out. I don't want to work in an office ever again. And so went straight there. Then about a year later, I was like, do you know, I feel like I'm over the fact that rugby ended so soon. I'll go back and watch Leicester. Went back and watched, and I'm loving it, and I'm like, this is great. And then I get in the car and start crying my eyes out, and I'm like, I'm not over it at all.
But it's like a really tough thing to be able to, because like David spoke about this a little bit. He wanted to decide when his career was over. Like he wanted to, like with CrossFit, like now, like he didn't want a little injury to then be the end of his CrossFit career and then not achieve what he'd maybe set out in his head to do. So I can imagine, like, it is an injury, isn't it? Concussion, really, but it's not like a typical injury. It's a different one, really. But it's also probably quite dangerous, isn't it? Like multiple concussions,
Yeah.
it can affect you for the rest of your life. I can imagine that would be like a really hard thing as a professional athlete who's kind of been from the age of 16 where you're in like academies and then like, what was it, 5 or so years where you're professional,
Yeah.
to then just be, boom, go into the normal life.
Yeah, I was chatting to Fran earlier. One of the toughest bits is like you've just kind of lost your identity and purpose. Do you know what I mean? Everyone used to introduce you as like, oh, this is Jamie, who plays rugby, and then it's like, oh, this is Jamie, does like a bit of PT or whatever. And you're like, oh, I used to
play rugby.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I promise I used to be good. And then obviously you just don't know where your life is heading for quite a bit.
I think we spoke about this before, and I think we might have spoken it with you, Phil, right, when we did the podcast with you. It's like making sure that whatever you do, like your identity isn't, attached to that, and
100%.
it's really, really hard to do. And I think, again, it's just making sure that you've got a little bit of something else going on, so you can, like you say, you're not just Jamie the rugby player, like you're Jamie Harrop.
Yeah.
This is Jamie Harrop, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's a great guy, he's, not just a rugby player, he's, good to be around, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But again, it's really hard to do.
I think it's because other people see your achievements as something that's like really impressive. Well, like quite often when you maybe are introduced to some people or like some friends or introduced to anyone, they're going to naturally go to that first thing that you've achieved to maybe just get across like the status of this person.
Yeah.
Like Kiara, who's 15 years old now. She went to the games last year, so a lot of her members in her box are like, oh, you're a games athlete, and I think in her head then like, oh, I'm a games athlete, like I've got to be like, it's not, she's still just Kiara, the same girl who's just as good as she was 2 months ago, but that extra pressure of having that like title of something that you've achieved, like if it's not dealt with or spoke about like the right way, like you say, when it then leaves, like you end up being, well, what's like my identity, who am I if I'm not this anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about like you said, you go watch a game, like you're like, oh, this is great, and then you come away from it, you're like, fuck, like I'm still not over it yet. Like, is it still like that now when you go to watch a game?
No, do you know, I think I'm back absolutely just loving rugby as a fan now.
Yeah.
I love it. I feel like I've had enough. Probably couldn't. Do you know, I went to my local rugby club and they were having a game, and being that kind of close to like grassroots rugby, I was like, oh, I can feel myself getting a bit emotional now, because this is kind of where it all started. I haven't really been around this kind of thing. But watching like, England rugby or Leicester Rugby Club, I'm back loving it now, which is nice.
That's good.
Has coming back as a spectator then helped you have more respect for yourself and what you did achieve and the level that you got to, or not? And did it put it into like, do you know what? Like when you're watching these people and like they're playing like really good rugby, it's like I used to be able to do that. Like, I was one of them.
Maybe. I'm maybe not there yet.
You know?
No.
I went watching the 2016 games. I went as a spectator, and I think obviously I was there the year before, and I was a little bit worried going watching, because obviously that year was the year I got injured and couldn't complete regionals to eventually hopefully qualify. But I'd already got tickets because they were sponsored by Reebok and they paid for flights to go out, so I was already booked to go. And I was a bit worried about going watching, like would it make me really like more pissed off about the injury? But it actually made me like happier that I could watch like the individual men and what they were doing, and like I could in a way enjoy my 2015 games experience more having watched the 2016, because you're in the stands then watching it happen, and it was like then you can kind of in a way remember what it was like the year
appreciate
before.
your
So like
accomplishments.
like how many people in the crowds, like shouting and like music and just the atmosphere, because when you're in the moment, like when you're playing, you probably just walk out on the pitch like looking down at the ground, not looking to the crowd, and then you play rugby and then you're back in the change room. But when you're in the stands watching it, it's like this used to be me. This was me like last year.
Yeah, I like that.
So when you started doing CrossFit, what was your intent? Because obviously, if you asked me and Steve, we'd be like, "Oh, we've got into CrossFit really to be CrossFit athletes." Was it same for you, or was it more like coaching, PTing, or Was it, I don't know, what filled the hole, or what was the hole that needed?
Yeah, probably at the time I just needed something like physical and a bit competitive, to just get all that kind of physicality and energy that you have out. Love competing, but I think, and this is maybe why I enjoy coaching so much. One, I think I learn skills really slowly. So whenever I coach someone, I'm like, well, I've done every progression on that. Okay, I can help you with this, don't worry. And two, I've got loads, like I've had a full knee reconstruction, and so I've got tons of asymmetries. So that's why I love like movement mechanics and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like naturally, probably, I've kind of generally finished about 50th in the UK in the Open, which is not amazing, but decent. But just enjoy competing, enjoy training.
From your how did you do your knee? What was it? Was it rugby as well?
Yeah, rugby as well. Tore my ACL and my MCL, and then at the time, the contract that I had was very reliant on match fees, and so for the rest of the season just had like a monster amount of tape around the knee and just played a whole season without an ACL, and then booked the ACL up afterwards. So now I have quite a wonky, I feel like I've got quite a wonky squat, and you're giving me some grief for it. I was been through a bit, Jack.
Just trying to help you, mate, It's funny though, like from, previous experiences, it obviously makes you aware and curious to find out, more about the body. Like you say, you've been doing the mentorship with Ash, the train stimulus, and kind of that intrigue into the movement mechanics a little bit more.
Yeah.
I feel like when I did a little bit of research on you before we, did this, you can see that you are really proud when, like you did your level 1 gymnastics course, the mentorship, like you can see you like to, share that side of things. And I feel like that's because, like you said before, you're actually really proud to be a coach and really enjoy the coaching side of things.
Yeah. 100%.
I guess what does that kind of bring to you, or why do you feel like you kind of enjoy that coaching?
Yeah, I guess you just want, or I just want to, you feel like you've made lots of mistakes, you feel like, I can just help people, and it's super rewarding, isn't it? When you spoke about Liam Holmes earlier, PH Nutrition, one of the things I think he did really brilliantly, I remember hearing him talk to Aoife, who's one of my best pals, and she's at semi-finals in a few weeks, and the way he was talking to her about her nutrition. And then I remember hearing Liam talk to Harriet in the same day, my wife, and she's a teacher, and was just wanting some help with her nutrition, and she plays a bit of netball at the weekend. And the way he spoke to both, he was taking both their kind of goals equally as seriously. And I thought, that's such a cool thing to try and take on board. So I feel like as a coach, if someone comes to you and says, I want to get to semi-finals, or they're saying, I want to get my first muscle up, to be like equally as enthused about both goals. It's just a cool way to operate, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
It really is.
I'm going to give you as much passion, irrespective of what your goal is. Like you guys say, whatever your CrossFit Games is, that's what.
I love that. It's great. It's great. Like you say, just because someone's a better athlete doesn't mean they're a better person, doesn't mean they're more important or anything like that. Like you say, everyone's got equally their own CrossFit Games, and to help someone get towards that, no matter what it is, it's a real privilege, I feel like, as a coach, to be able to, to really do that. Sometimes you do have to remind yourself, I think, as well. I feel like trying to stay grounded, and I don't know, either having someone that you can talk to, to remind you that things, or having a bit of a strategy to keep you grounded, I do think's, quite important as well. Because it's easy to get carried away with, especially in CrossFit, everyone's just posting the stuff on Instagram. Like, it's such everything just seems to revolve around that platform at times. And again, it's just removing yourself from that situation and having that bit of time. And Aoife, so I feel like you guys have trained with each other since forever.
Yeah.
Did you start out at Shapesmiths together?
Yeah, we started at Shape. Well, so we were at a box in North London.
Okay.
And then she was like, "Oh, there's a box opening down in Southwest London. You want to have a look at it?" And then we kind of moved down from there. And just been kind of pals and training partners ever since.
Everything.
Yeah.
And I presume you both coach there on like a daily basis, when?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I guess kind of how is she the only kind of training partner you've ever really had? Like how? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. She's kind of she's just a cool athlete to be around. She's super focused, super just kind of she's able to just dial everything in and just focus on being just super present and in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas my mind's quite often going off at 1,000 things. So being around someone who's totally different to you, who like can have like one thought, like I'm going to lift this bar, whereas my brain will be thinking about 50 things all at once, and I'm like, no, focus on just lifting the bar.
If she was here and we asked her the same question about you, what do you think she'd say that you bring to the table?
I don't know, shit chat, good pants.
Good bands?
Probably just that, yeah.
But I feel like from, when we've been training this past couple of days, not spent loads of time together, but a little bit of time, like, you do seem, like you enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you kind of have that side where it's like, we're here to enjoy this as well as just, do the work as well, which I think coming back to before when we're on about the enjoyment and the pressure and all that sort of stuff. Like, I guess you're more focused on the coaching side, so training, I feel like you can be like, this isn't the be all and end all.
Yeah, true. I also feel like maybe coming from a team sport background, you're always kind of laughing and joking when you're, in a rugby club. Do you know what I mean? Whereas maybe if you come from an individual sport background, you think, well, I need to take this incredibly seriously. I can't. Whereas I feel like you can laugh and joke in between sets, can't you? And then dial everything in when you approach the bar and be like, right, come on, focus now.
Yeah.
I think this is my perception of you in the last few days. I think your best trait as a training partner is probably, I can imagine you being a reliable training partner.
Okay.
As in, like, you're always there, and you're on time type thing, and you turn up. There's nothing worse. I feel like you're arranged to train with someone at a certain time, and they just don't turn up, or they end up being like an hour late. I feel like you'd be the reliable one. Is that right?
Yeah.
We'll ask Aoife.
Yeah. What's your best trait as an athlete? He's always on time.
Tries really hard. I think it's important though, as a training partner, as a trait.
Well, that was top of Chris Hoy's list of important values to have. Always on time.
Always on time.
There you go, mate.
Sets the stone, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
Sets
does.
the standard.
Yeah. It also shows respect, I think, as well. Like, if someone...
In agreement with
Yeah,
training.
yeah. I think it's super important. What, from your time, through rugby, are there any strategies that you took that you were maybe aware of when you were being coached to then becoming the coach in CrossFit? Is there anything you kind of took from your previous sport into, PT and coaching, that stuff, when you made the transition?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think the biggest thing is, like we say, is trying to, even though you are valuing everyone's goal equally, trying to treat everyone differently. Like we're just saying, people like to be spoken differently in workouts. The same program that you've provided for someone might not work as well for somebody else because they're built differently. They might have one dodgy knee or whatever. And trying to just be like, right, approach everyone like they're a totally different athlete each time.
Yeah, I do think it's I think it's a fine balance, because I feel like if and I don't feel like you probably mean it in this way, but maybe you do, we'll find out in a sec. But for example, if someone's a better athlete, like feeling like you've got to give them more time, which I don't feel like everyone should be given like an even amount of time. Do you know what I mean? I don't feel like if someone's asking you like for something specific, they're going out of the way, they're taking the responsibility, they're asking you for help. I feel like in that situation, all good to kind of give them more time. But I feel like if you look like you're favouring one person to another, it then causes, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Splinters, yeah. But I don't know, did you mean it that way?
No, definitely not. No, more like from their mindset to the way they're going to cope with the demands that you're giving, on the program, to their biomechanics, to their like bioenergetics. Just thought I'd throw that word in just to show off a little bit.
You sound super smart.
Yeah. Everyone should just be treated right. This is a blank canvas. How am I gonna best help you?
Yeah.
And I feel like being, as a coach, humble and open enough to be like, I know this worked for somebody else, but maybe it doesn't work for you, so I'm just going to go back to the drawing board and we're going to figure out together.
It becomes your issue rather than the client or the athlete.
Exactly.
That's really interesting as well, to be honest. I think, like you say, just having that open-mindedness to be like, right, like you say, it's not a one fits all method, is it? And I think also being curious as a coach is quite important, like wanting to know about people a little bit more, like what's your story. And again, even like with the movement mechanic stuff that you do with your your clients, you might want to test something out, and again it's that curiosity to be like, I wonder if I do this, will this work? Again, it'll be somewhat calculated, but I find that really interesting, just finding out a little bit more about people. So I guess like coaching over the years, you've been coaching since 2015 or 2015, so that's 7 years now. What would you say like has been, I don't know, the biggest lesson you've picked up over the 7 years, or a few key lessons that you're like, if a young Jamie was getting into coaching, or if there was a young girl or boy getting into coaching, like what would your advice be to them?
Maybe just to again, like you say, keep being curious, keep being super hardworking, but also keep putting everything into perspective, which I feel like would be my lesson to myself throughout my life.
How do you keep stuff in perspective now then?
I guess just remind yourself that, if something tough happens, or if you have that, like we were saying, if you have that setback, or if, an athlete who you're working with is like, I think I'm going to go off here, to be like, that's not the end of the world. I just want to help everyone who comes to it. Yeah, exactly.
I tell you, who does a very good job of reminding me to keep perspective is Hannah. Like, she's like, what are you doing? Like, what about this? Or like, it's not all about CrossFit. You've got to go see your friends outside the gym as well sometimes, and that sort of stuff. Hannah's very good at that. Does Harriet get on your case as well with stuff like that?
Definitely. But I remember even when I took my first few CrossFit classes.
Yeah.
And then you take your fourth CrossFit class and it's chaos, and you're like, oh no, and then you feel like, oh my god, am I going to be a terrible coach? And then obviously after you take like 300 CrossFit classes, you're like, if it's a bit of chaos, you're not too worried about it.
Exactly. It's a challenge.
Yeah, exactly.
And it'd be the same when you play rugby. Your first couple of games, you're like, oh shit, like I've played really shit there.
Exactly,
and then 300 games in, you're like, pretty good at this.
Well, and even like, sometimes you wouldn't start the first game of the season and you'd be thinking this is, doom and gloom, and then 3 months in you're playing every game and you're thinking, I could quite do with a week off. I hope I'm dropped next week so my body has a bit of a rest.
So you kind of recently joined you know, our coaching team as well. I guess what for you, I don't know, resonated with us, like, is that the right way to put it? I don't know, what did you kind of see in us, I guess, that you were like, you know, I'd quite like to join you guys. That's just my curiosity.
So I've been a JST athlete following the programme kind of for quite a while.
How long's a while?
We'd have to look back.
2018.
Yeah.
Leicester and Coventry as rugby clubs are quite kind of like working class, hard working, just get your head down, no frills. You know, I remember a lad turning up with white boots once and being told to go home. This was like, you've not earned the right to wear white boots at training, mate. You know, so coming into CrossFit, sometimes when I see people, you know, posting all their training on Instagram, I think, oh, well done, you've done a bit of training. Cool. You know, you don't see Johnny Wilkinson posting endless videos of him kicking. You just know he's doing it because the results are just there. And I feel like there's a little bit of that in JST, isn't there, where it's like just come in, get your head down, work hard, no frills, no egos. Everyone's just kind of humble and hard working, which is you know what I want to be all about.
Appreciate that.
Even if Steve, a few comps has mugged me off a few times.
Go on, you've only told the story 4 times. You may as well tell it for the 5th time while the podcast is on.
I won't embarrass you. It's all right.
I don't actually know this story, so come on.
It's quite funny.
We're at a comp. We're in the warm-up area. We both got virus trackies on.
Yes. Other tracksuits are available.
Yeah. We're about to do it's like a 1RM snatch, and I think, oh, there's Steve Fawcett. I'll go over to him. I'll make a little joke. This will be bloody brilliant. So I wander over to him and I go, virus trackies. Add 5 kilos to your lift if you're lifting these. Steve just looks at me, does this horrid little half smile, like, yeah, cheers, mate. And then just turns his back. And I'm like, oh no, that's my one chance. I've been mugged off. There it is.
I've apologised multiple times today. Every time it's told the story. In my defence, I probably didn't understand what he said.
And he did only lift 5 kilos more than me, so
there you go.
Yeah.
It's only the trackies, wasn't it, mate?
Giving it a big
I think that's, you know, it's quite an interesting point that you made.
15 kilos more this morning.
Still got that competitiveness deep in there. But what's interesting is what you said there is, you know, like the kind of background and the story of Coventry and Leicester's, like say, working class, get on with it. You know, it's not all about the frills. It's just the hard work you do in the shadows. And I do like to think that, like you said, we are quite similar in that sense. We're not really flashy. You know, we've not really got any. Well, you've got quite a lot of followers, but I've definitely not. Happy to
grown for like the last 10 years.
Well, happy to just, you know, crack on as long as we're helping people to, you know, do the best. And yeah, we're just, like you say, JST Compete was created off the back of hard work, trying to be, you know, the best athlete that Steve could, and then it's kind of, you know, gone from there really. So it's just interesting how it all aligns.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's super interesting. Is there anything else you kind of want to touch on? I feel like you've now got a few individual clients with us. For you as a coach, what are kind of the big kind of 3 things that you want from the athletes that you work with? And we've probably already covered these before from what you've said, but I feel like...
Do you know, I think the best thing is when people just speak to you and communicate with you regularly and openly. You know, sometimes you go on Fitter and you think, oh, this person's just ticked, or put like a little green tick emoji, and you think, oh, I wish you would just send me all your videos, because then I can just make your program better and better. Do you know? So I feel like, even though maybe sometimes athletes think, oh, I shouldn't message them. I bloody love it when people send me all their feedback, because you think, I know you now, I can see you, I can see how you're moving, I can help you more and more.
There's nothing worse when you sit down and think, I'm going to do this person's program today for the next week, and you sit down and you go, right, let's look through the last week, recap on the messages that they've sent, and it's just like nothing. It's like, right, what do we do this week?
Yeah.
It's like, well, how can you work it? And then it just makes the job of doing that week way harder than if they'd fed back.
Yeah, exactly. I always feel like
really easy or whatever.
They just become like a generic avatar instead of like, I get to see this person all the time, don't they? So I feel like the best is when people are just open and honest, even if they're struggling with something and are like, oh, I couldn't do that thing you set for me, or I couldn't do my training this week because I had X and Y stress in my life, or whatever. You're like, oh, no worries. Let's help you out. Let's figure out how to make your program even better and get you to where you want to be.
And I feel like for me myself, I've been a little bit more like strict with athletes in the sense that I said, like, if I'm going to put the effort into doing your program, I want you to put the effort into you, like giving me the results and the feedback as to what happened in the training sessions. Because like you said, if I don't know how that training session's gone, like I don't know whether to progress it as I was going to change it, like you've no idea, you're flying blind and you're just guessing. And then for the athlete, it's like, oh, well, I couldn't do that last week and we're doing it again this week. And it's like, well, not mind reader.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's give and take. Yeah, it's a two-way relationship and not just like, coach to athlete. Yeah. And I feel like it's important to get that message across because, and again, same for the guys on the JST Athlete as well. Like, take the responsibility. If you need help, ask us because we are happy to help, and we say this so much.
I always feel like sometimes people think it's quite like a top-down relationship, isn't it? Like coach-athlete, whereas in fact you're like, all I want to do is help you. That's literally the reason I get up, is to help you and get you to where you want to be. So literally just ask me and I will do everything I can, and if I don't know the answer, then we'll figure it out together.
It's true. And again, Rob Baxter at Exeter said he's creating more of like rather than being a hierarchy, a little bit of a flatter hierarchy. And same with the guys at Dave Brailsford and British Cycling. Like, he says he puts the crowns on top of the athlete's head. Like, they've got everything that the athletes need, but the athletes have got to, take the responsibility to be like, right, I need to go and see the physio today. I need to go and speak to Steve Peters today. And in that way, the athlete's got the power, and because they feel like they've got the power a little bit more in that sense, like that bit of control, they feel like, right, I've got that, I've got like everything under control. I'm doing everything I can to make it happen. And I think relating that to us as coaches, it's like, ask us for advice if you're struggling, send us a video if you're struggling. Like, you've got to take that bit of responsibility to reach out. And, ask us for help. Cool.
Love it.
We've got a training session in about 10 minutes.
We have 6 minutes.
6 minutes.
I think that's all my words used up for the day.
This is the second podcast in 2 days. Fran thinks she's getting a conversation out of me tonight.
But yeah, thanks for your time, Jamie. That was
having me on.
great conversation. Loved it.
Bro.
Cheers, mate.
See ya.
See ya.